Hello and welcome to South Asia Chat, a podcast series brought to you by the Institute of South Asian Studies at the National University of Singapore. My name is Saeeduddin Faridi. I'm a research analyst at the Institute, and I will be your host for today's episode on the political challenges emerging in Bangladesh and how the interim government is responding to these. Following Sheikh Hasina's ouster in August of 2024, Chief Advisor Professor Muhammad Yunus's interim government was formed. Over 6 months into this new administration now, Bangladesh finds itself navigating troubled waters. The government is grappling with a host of challenges, from socioeconomic instability to political and governance issues, all of which threaten to undermine its initial promise of reform and progress. The coming months will be crucial for the country's future as the interim government faces the difficult task of maintaining order without resorting to the repressive tactics of its predecessor. The crackdown on Hasina loyalists under Operation Devil Hunt has raised concerns about a tightening grip on power, while simultaneously a UN report on human rights violations pressures the interim government to hold former officials accountable or risk appearing complicit. So the ongoing transition is further complicated by Sheikh Hasina's continued influence from exile, which also adds a delicate layer to the diplomatic relations with India. So, with the country still dealing with this aftermath of the student-led revolution, Bangladesh's political and economic stability remain uncertain. To discuss the emerging scenario in Bangladesh, we are joined by Dr. Sayeed Ferdous, Professor of Anthropology at the Jahangirnagar University. Dr. Firdaus, thank you for joining us today and welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you, Said. Thank you. It's an honor to be here, and I'm happy to talk to you. Yeah, thank you.
I'll start with a more broad question. So, following the ouster of Sheikh Hasina, the interim government came to power with a reform agenda in mind. To that effect, there were several reform commissions which were also set up. So, what kind of progress has been made so far?
Okay. Yeah, it's a pretty open question, actually. There is a lot to do, and particularly when a prolonged oppressive and autocratic regime was there for last more than one and a half and more than one and a half decades. So when the new government is here, they had huge to do actually. So and they are doing they have started their task. They have set up commissions, and the commissions talked converse and set and had meetings with different stakeholders and prepared their report and submitted back the reports to the government. So visibly at a level of policy, at a level of planning, things is progressing. But at the same time, this depends on, like, you can set up commissions, you can set up task force, and they can prepare the report, but then materializing or getting them to be to find them in action is another story, and that requires consensus. And the government had set up a consensus commission as well, like with representative from all the commissions previously set up. The government now had there is this body of consensus commission. They are trying to talk to every political actors on the field, and they try to exchange their views and try to come to a minimum uh, like agenda or issues of reformation. If the political parties agree on that, then the government will start working on that. So this is basically now to finding. It's not a top-down thing, which is pretty appreciative thing. Like, the government is not considering it to do something top-down, but they want to get the uh, vibe from the ground as well, and they want their participation, and they want their opinion, because at the end of the day, this government is only temporary, and after the term is over, or after they would hand over the power to a politically elected government, that government would be responsible primarily to materialize these commission recommendations. So before doing anything the government requires, and they're rightly proceeding on that direction, that they really want to reach to a minimum consensus, to a minimum agreement among all the political actors and the commission body, all the commissions, to find what can be a future direction for reform in Bangladesh. So at a policy level, things are going good, but in reality, there are lot many other issues, because when there was no political structure, no political institution is there. Almost the economic structure had damaged, had been like collapsed miserably, and so there is this intolerance, a level of intolerance in society and culture. It's a long nourished intolerance over the decades. So there are a lot many other issues that will affect this process of reformation too, and that is pretty unpredictable too. I think I can stop for the moment.
That answer really helped illustrate the kind of big task that lies ahead, and the big task that the interim government inherited, and the kind of landscape that exists now. And I will want to come back to the Reforms Commission in a minute, but just want to take the conversation towards some of the law and order related things that we've been hearing about. And this month, a UN fact-finding mission released a report on the potential human rights violations that were committed under Sheikh Hasina's regime. So, could you maybe shed some light on how the interim government is legally addressing these claims?
Okay. First of all, I'm not a legal expert, but I will try to respond to your question as a concerned Bangladeshi citizen. Firstly, this is a huge thing for us. This is a big, much needed like report from the UN Commission, because we know what happened in Bangladesh. We, the people of Bangladesh who were on the grassroots, we know what happened here. So what had happened here? So there is this lobby and propaganda and other stuffs, and in some cases, it's not only the past regime is involved into that, but then they had allies outside Bangladesh as well. They also involved in those disinformation and misinformation and propaganda. So for us, this is really important to get an international recognition that the regime, what the regime had done, was severely wrong. To get that from UN was pretty important. So that thing, we can at least we can say that, see, the people where Bangladesh is in the right side of the thing. So number one. Number two is uh, basically before this UN report was published, the government has started working to take people responsible for the atrocities and violence in the past regime, like under the supervision of the past regime, or to protect the past regime, the violence and the atrocities had been committed. So the government is trying to try them, to bring them under justice. So the ICT is there, and the first thing the government had taken in the first hour, in its first hour, the government actually set up this ICT with set up these new bodies of ICT, like prosecutors, appointed prosecutors, chief prosecutors, and attorney general. And the ball started rolling from there. The prosecutors are forming charge against specific cases, like listening to specific victims on specific incident of violence on different, like this is, there are July August thing, the long July incidents of 2024, but even before that, during the past regime of 15 years, people were like a victim of violence and atrocities, and they are coming to the commission. They are they're offering their testimonies, and the ICT is listening to them, forming charge and taking up legal steps. So this has been going on. This legal process is in action. I just can tell you that.
Thank you for that answer and putting together some of the legal aspects of this. I do want to come to some of the interim government's actions, which have also raised concerns about its own human rights related practices and the kind of force and legislations it might be using for cracking down, particularly on Sheikh Hasina supporters. So, an example of this is the ordinance that replaced the controversial Cybersecurity Act. And we've also seen the Operation Devil Hunt in action. So, what is your take on these moves, and how is perhaps the government also responding to these allegations?
Yeah, that's a very crucial question, actually. We protested the atrocities and violence. We protested the repressive regime. That doesn't mean that we would allow the new government to be like that. So, yes, definitely. You rightly pointed out the red flag about this controversial Cybersecurity Act component is there, still there. And so, yeah, we have things in mind, and people and activists on the street and on their pen and paper had set up have like pointed out these things and raised these issues. But I would also say, like, this excessive use of forces. You particularly mentioned about the Awami supporters, Awami League supporter, or past regime supporters. But I would slightly differ with you in this regard. Yes, definitely, there had been a few incidents, few unpleasant thing and unfortunate thing that had taken place against the Awami supporters. But if you consider the level of atrocities the past regime had committed, there could be we were actually afraid of a more bloodshed, we had this fear in our mind that people is had so much anguish, people had so much like pain and grief and experience of suffering and torture, they may just come for revenge. And I would appreciate that Bangladeshi people, the people in Bangladesh, basically showed their utmost patience and restraint. But then I have a point of agreement with you in this regard as well. Like, there is this long culture of repressiveness of state machineries in South Asia, like in every state in South Asia, every or many other states in across the globe. So there is this like, just consider the name Devil Hunt. The name itself says it all. It's like you are actually ripping off as humanity of somebody, and you are leveling them as devil and hunting them. So this itself is like very comes from a very repressive culture, and this repressiveness is kind of legitimized by the state use of state machineries. So these cultural issues, governance, like, there is this widely accepted thing that the government agencies can use excessive force to maintain law and order. There's this agreement even among the public, the government institution, the law enforcing agencies. So this is a huge problem. So not about the Awami supporters only, but you'd remember a few days ago there is this issues of indigenous right, and there is this procession on the street of Dhaka, and few other people who disagree with this idea that there are like people ethnic small ethnic communities or small ethnic groups or small nationalities should be given a status of indigeneity. So they were against them, and they used their forces, and police was standing, and kind of police's silence was actually encouraging the aggressive attitude of the opponents, and they basically beaten up the activists ruthlessly. Girl, Chakma girl, Tanchunga girl, and other Bangladesh, other Bengali ethnic, like people from Bengali ethnic background, they were also had been attacked. So this use of excessive force and use of force by the police, the primary school teachers were had some of their demands to the government. Their demand can be unjust, but the way this government, the police uses excessive force on them, it just reminded you the past regime. So these things are happening, and this is not particularly happening only against Awami League, but it is also happening against people who are against that regime too. So the thing is, what I'm trying to point out, that this culture of using excessive force under the supervision of state machineries, or use of forces by the state machineries, has some kind of what should I say, like, this is not legal, this is not illegal, everybody know this is legally not valid, but everybody accept that, oh, police would use excessive force inside their police station and on the street. So these things are there, and these things are happening now as well. So, and we have concerns over them, and our activists and policymakers, we are trying to raise voice to them and trying to protest those things. You are right in this regard. Yeah.
Thank you for that answer. I think it highlighted several important points, and for me, the two very crucial takeaways that you really well illustrated two takeaways that the interim government must be cognizant of are that the continuities of oppressive state structures and machinery, which can continue from a previous regime, and the when how dehumanization is often employed by states. So these are two crucial takeaways from this answer. Thank you for that. I do want to turn the focus a little bit towards constitutional reforms now, and there's the Constitutional Reform Commission, which recently submitted its report to the interim government. It has proposed significant changes to the constitution, including having a term limit for the prime minister, ensuring a right to food and shelter, and also replacing the foundational principles of state policy. So I wonder, how do you see these proposals?
Oh, they really did a commendable job, particularly this Constitutional Reform Commission. Informally, I've heard from some of the members present in that commission how they had worked. They actually try to reach at the people at the ground. They try to reach different people on different walks of life, and try to listen divergent voices and let everyone speak. But they also say that we are recording everything what you are talking to us. If you are against, if you don't want women leadership in the politics, okay, that's your opinion, we are recording that, but we will present this state, what you are saying, we will make it public at some point, like so that people of Bangladesh has a right, have the right to listen what you are saying. So this is interesting. The modus operandi they had worked. This is fantastic. They worked in a fantastic way, and particularly the examples you have just mentioned, like the limits for the prime minister, or ensuring the right to food and shelter, yeah, and replacing the foundational principle of the state policy. Yes, this may sound a little, the last one may sound a little bit controversial, or but it requires, like, because the foundational policy was only conversing to the previously accepted Bengali nationalism, which actually there is this huge debate in the field of identity and cultural politics in Bangladesh. So there is this new issue that, well, in the name of secular Bengaliness, people are actually discounting people with religious identity, and they should also be taken into account, because in South Asia, religion and religion is a big issue in the realm of politics. So that should be taken into account. So they are rethinking. Based on the feedback they have received from the bottom, from the ground, they are actually reconsidering the foundational principle. So we yet to know that what will be the final shape, and they are also thinking about, like, the structure of the parliament, whether that would be a two-layer structure, or or it will be a conventional style of like structure, the pre-existing structure. So they had these fascinating ideas. Some of these ideas are out of the box ideas. So yeah, they worked really hard, and I really appreciate the proposal they had presented. Now it's on the policymakers, and it's on the consensus commission and the other policymakers, how they would respond to that. Yeah.
You mentioned how the commission had reached out to a lot of stakeholders within the state to come up with their recommendations. One important stakeholder in this regard would be the opposition parties within the democratic setup of Bangladesh. Also important their importance probably underlies because of to sustain any reforms, it will be important to incorporate the opposition within it. So perhaps you could shed some light on what kind of relationship is developing between the interim government and the opposition parties and how they are engaged within the reform process.
Ah, yeah. This is a bit tricky actually because this is not a conventional government versus opposition thing. What is going on in Bangladesh? This government is a government of consensus. So, like what you are whom you are mentioning as opposition parties, they are also had their stake in this government. Not if not officially, of course, unofficially. So, from the very beginning, I was urging that the government should take the political actors on board. The government should listen to them. The government should make a build up a functional relationship with them. They should make like small operational committees or small bodies to deal like day-to-day issues in different corners of the country. And on those issues, like particularly the price hike or law and order situation, they really need the support of the big political actors or political actors on the field. Like I can understand that the people in the government, the advisors particularly, they are from civil society and they had little or no political background, basically. Like they're not involved with any political parties or activities. So mostly their expertise is in the field of like governance and like civil society in that realm. So they don't have the expertise how to deal issues on the ground, how to deal issues on day-to-day political and cultural lives. So on that, even the smallest political party has much would have much more leverage than these advisors. So I was urging from the beginning that the government should take that into account. The problem is people in the civil society, with all their good intention and good heart, they had these issues of trust about the politicians. They think that the politicians are very conventional and they are not ready for changes, and they only are power monger, and they only look for a proper reform or look for a new Bangladesh. So they were not possibly they were not this is my hunch that possibly they were mostly it was like a photo session kind of thing in front of the media. They're having tea together and like exchanging views, which is a very customary or ritualistic thing, but not a actual functional collaboration between the political parties and the government. So, but that was much needed. And when the law and order situation deteriorated, at that moment, people actually felt that. And you can put blame on each other. But the most important thing is maintain a consensus between the political parties and the government. So, on the other side, the big political actors, they had also issues. They may also think that this government is not our government, and they may have this. If I'm say trust would be a very heavy word in this regard, but there is some kind of what should I say disagreement, like particularly if I mention the name like Bangladesh Nationalist Party (BNP), the largest political party on action at the moment. They are asking for a quicker schedule for election, and the government took long basically to offer a roadmap for the election. So there is this disagreement and gap between the political parties and the government. But sooner it would be better that if the government can really build up a proper functional it's never it's better late than never. Like it's never too late to make this to reach this understanding and collaboration with the political parties. So I would ask that the government would take the help of the political parties, and the political parties would be willing, they should have to be open-minded. There are occasions when I can see that the politicians are really acting in a very conventional way, and they have to come out of their own niche and or own like preconceived boxes of preconceived ideas. Yeah.
I do want to move this conversation a little bit towards some of the developments that have taken on the foreign relations front. And we've seen Bangladesh and Pakistan resuming trade talks or talking about it, and uh, and relationships with India having soured to some degree. And there were some sharp language exchanges between India and Bangladesh when India's foreign minister said that Bangladesh must decide what kind of ties it wants. So I was just wondering, how do you see this emerging landscape for Bangladesh in terms of its engagement and partnership with other countries in South Asia?
Basically, it's healthy for any country to have a good collegial relationship, good partnership with the bordering with the neighboring countries and the bordering countries. So they should have that good relationship. Unfortunately, with India, it's always a relationship of tension. Small neighbors of India often find the role of India is difficult to handle. Like so, in the case of Bangladesh, particularly, we are not against the people of India. We are not against the people of Pakistan. Like what Pakistan did in '71 to Bangladesh was the Pakistani regime and the army. So it was not like even among the Pakistanis there were lot many who hardly knew the fact what were going on, and it's the same about this in this age of too many information, misinformation, disinformation. I doubt how many Indians actually know what has been going on in Bangladesh. So basically, it's a regime, and this is really sad that the ousted autocrat is getting shelter in India. And after that, the Indian Prime Minister, Indian Foreign Secretary, is saying that like Bangladesh has to decide what kind of relationship they want with India. Now, India has to deal with. I should reverse back this, or I should rephrase this to Mr. Jayashankar, because they are actually hosting our ousted who would be who is already accused of murders and atrocities in her own country, and India is sheltering the person, and now India is asking that Bangladesh have to decide what they want with India. And particularly but people in Bangladesh over the decade, it was not when I was a child. I never find this anti-Indian sentiment at this height, what we are experiencing these days. In the last 1.5 decade, India become at the grassroots, people had zero tolerance about India. And why is that? Because everybody had this feeling that the past regime to taking all to the past regime the regime that had conducted election scams, and the regime that had been in power with using excessive forces, had all their support from India. And to earn that support from India, the regime actually served every purpose of India. Like they gave India unequal business relationship. They gave India transit through our land. So these issues were there. People in Bangladesh had reasons for become like frustrated about India's role over the decades. So now, what we really want, even after all this, I would point to that fact that even after all this, even during these few months of the interim government, the trade, like the import from India, has been increased than the past year. So this is interesting. Like you see, we are dependent on each other. India is dependent on us. We are dependent, but if India think that we are a small country. India had a significant role in '71. They supported our liberation struggle, and if that entitled India, to interfere in our internal political and social issues. That would be like that would be a crossing of the line. So, and India is probably thinking like there is this idea of gratefulness, and there is this idea of brotherhood between Bangladesh and India, friendship of Bangladesh and India. Like in diplomacy, no country could be, if this is not personal amity or rivalry. In diplomacy, no country is a permanent friend or foe. So this is important, that this is all strategical relationship. And in this strategical relationship, India really have to think like we appreciate India's role in 71, but that doesn't entitle India that we have to be ever grateful. Whatever they would do about Bangladesh, we have to accept that. So people of Bangladesh should decide their fate, and India should have respect. The regime in India should have respect to that, should have respect. Whatever is happening in Bangladesh, that is all that is entirely Bangladeshi people's issue. You may not like the fact. I don't like the fact that India is governed by saffron. I don't like that fact, but I have no say about that. So it should be the same. Jaishankar should have no say about who would take over the power here and how the country will be ruled. This is entirely the issue of Bangladesh. India should pay proper respect about the sovereignty of Bangladesh. India should pay proper respect about the state policy and the people's sentiment, and the relation should be on the basis of an equal friendship among the people of both countries. And strategically, we both need each other, and it should be a good collegial relation. That I believe. And for that, as a big nation, as a big neighbor, India has lot to do.
Thank you for that answer. And perhaps this might be a good point to end this conversation and to perhaps pose this question of India deciding what it wants with its relationship with Bangladesh. But Dr. Firdaus, thank you so much for joining us today and taking out time for this conversation. And I'm sure our listeners will find your answers most insightful.
Thank you, Saeed, and thank you to ISAS and NAS for hosting this thing and taking me on board. Thank you very much.
You were listening to South Asia Chat. You can learn more about our work by visiting us at isas.nus.edu.sg. You can also get updates on our research and publications through social media. You can find us on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram.